Good afternoon and most welcome to 1022, as I will pronounce our Heidegger series after this, not having to say 1000 every time. I will continue on the path started the penultimate lecture 1020 about the voice of the friend. And the name of the lecture is The Voice of My Friend, or The Voice of the Friend. No name, no body, no origin, no destination, no message, no saying. From Heidegger through the ears of Derrida and then through the voice of Derrida, we will dwell further into this most interesting subject about the voice. The voice, one could say, has in itself everything, no needing any add-ons, no supplement to heal any lack in the voice. It doesn't take any explanatory force. Add-ons, as we saw in the text, could be face of the voice, a body, a name, an origin, a destination, and oneness. The voice is open. To say that the voice belongs to a friend only would mean adding an extra. And the one that is clearly indicated, the oneness in the openness of the friend, clearly points out oneness, but does not exclude two-ness or plurality. The oneness and the plurality of the voice, how openness and non-exclusion can proclaim clearly, whereas exclusion cannot proclaim. It is only openness that can proclaim, that can come into existence. This is the multiplicity of the voice of a friend. Ian McGilchrist eerily mentioned that in a video sent to me by Kalle Lundahl. Oddly enough, what he wanted me to hear was about intelligence, but just following up, Ian starts to talk about hearing something or understanding something, and that you have a hunch on what it is. Deciding what it is before it shows itself kills it off. It makes understanding impossible. And that is, according to Ian McGilchrist, the left hemisphere, the doings of the left hemisphere that preemptively decide what it is and does not let the thing decide for itself. These are the add-ons. These are the decisions made by the left hemisphere, whereas the voice has everything, and we know it. It is the left hemisphere that goes in and shuts off understanding, experiencing. It's only when we have openness, we have the power to speak and to understand. Without the openness, we will both lose the power to speak and to understand. We lose out on both writing and signing. And excluding proclaim cannot clearly and directly claim oneness. Neither can it claim plurality. Only the openness of the voice, the allowing of the voice. This is what Ian McGilchrist was pointing to in the video. I will make a link of it further down below me. And this is an extremely important point made. Very thankful for the point made in the voice of the friend. And it should not be forgotten, because this is, although not mentioned much before by any observers of Heidegger, and actually, oddly enough, not being a greater part of his writing, this is a key factor to understanding Heidegger. And one thing I realized immediately, this is so different from how we usually perceive the ear, and this is how the voice, the ear, was something that Heidegger specifically pointed to. He wanted to make this clear. I would say this is an underlying line in Heidegger, and it goes all the way through from the early beginning, Zeit und Sein, and all the way to the Kehre, to his latest years. It is there constantly. It is only the openness itself that can proclaim, and I realize Lichtung is that openness. The openness that doesn't decide preemptively and let the object come to. It's a letting. And this is also the key to understanding Dasein, and stop making equivalent of Dasein with the I, the subjective, the consciousness, or the you, the otherness. Dasein means Dasein. And once we decide preemptively, we shut off the process. This is deafening your own ears and muting your own voice. This is modernity. An important point from Heidegger is, as long as we haven't dwelled deep and good into this for a long time, we will not be able to understand. To assume understanding is in itself a very grave mistake, and that will hinder development completely. This is doing beings of the being. The big B becomes beings. And no longer Dasein will be able to do and to work. It blocks out the capacity for the voice to be precise and general. Your preemptive idea of what you are about to say will block out the possibility for your voice to develop, your speech to develop. This makes this book that I showed last lecture 1021 even more horrible and horrific, I would say, because it's teaching us how to add ons even more, like a verb, consciously taking away all possibility of understanding even more, establishing beings and blocking out understanding. It's a book against understanding. It puts a stance, it's superficial, it is a lie, it's blasphemous. A retrogradal book, retrobate. If any book was a styggelse, retrobate, it's that book. Well, I say, and I completely agree with both Ian McGilchrist and Stephen M. Rosen, these are the end of times in some ways. But I don't share their apocalyptic vision. I think this is the beginning of times. Now it will change. Ears that no longer can hear, understand and develop are ears that decide the origin of the voice, the quality of the voice, the face of the voice, the flesh of the voice, its destiny, its value, and so forth. No longer can the full multitude, the extreme complexity of the voice speak. That is preemptively shut down, blocked out from vision, from hearing, from tactility, from presencing. We are shutting down the Lichtung. Now it will be abundantly clear what the closing of the ear is. Openness, understanding, is to listen, but also to talk. It is not limiting or stumping the presensing. We are, in a way, both active and passive in our understanding. We sort of strengthen our ears to reach out, and once we found something, we go into a more passive mood. We listen in, we don't decide, we let the thing come into existence. That's passivity. Whereas the ordinary process is just the opposite. It's passivity in the worldview of the world being just out there. And then when it comes to understanding, to take in, once the signal is sent out, there is preemptive, too forceful, and activity. Decidedness. Add-ons like face, body, name, and particularly singularity. This is of singular origin, not multiple. That would block out understanding effectively. And adding me and McGilchrist to this shows also that the researcher like him, and that incredible research material, many different testing shows this to be the truth. Academic people are actually the ones who hear least. The big test, checking out if there are more prejudiced. Nota bene, this prejudice is also the preemptive take on reality. But it shows when in understanding what something is, they have too soon an understanding of what it is. but people who are skilled, educated in a proper way, will be able to wait those milliseconds until it shows itself, because they are acutely dependent on letting things be what they are. They need to reach reality for their professional career and so forth. They show an attitude in waiting, being passive. And of course, this makes you not be able to reach reality, into the depth of reality, being able to have a deeper, more comprehensive understanding. Put in a pause there. I will read a little bit more from reading Heidegger, Commemorations, and go further with Derrida here. We are on page 169 for the ones who has this book or the papers ready. I will just repeat the last win once. Gönnen, to grant. For we find in this word, besides the sense of a generous gift, that of accord, of harmonia, of harmony as accord, quasi-musical and perceptible to certain ear. This harmony will be of importance to us shortly in our reading of Heidegger's Heraclitus. Then this world accords to things their being. Things is the accord of things. World equals accord of things. Welt gehört die Dinge. The world accords things in the double sense of giving things, giving to things their essence, but also their accord. Further on, one sees appear the Walten that, as we shortly see, will have long commanded all the thought of Heraclitus Polemos, as Heidegger interprets it. Intimacy, interiority, Innigkeit, that gathers the world and things is not a confusion, Verschmelzung. This intimacy prevails, imposes itself, or its force, indeed its violence. It rules or dominates, waltet, it l'emporte. I would say, in French or in English, it carries the day, only where the inside, das Innige, word and thing are purely separated, disjoined, rein sich scheidet, and remain disjoined, separated, dissociated, geschieden bleibt, in the middle of the two, in the between that separates the world and a thing, in their inter, in this unter of the Unterschied, in the dis of the difference. The separation carries the day, in ihrem Inter, in diesem Unter, waltet der Schied. Then, after insisting on the fact that difference, Unterschied, must no longer be heard here as the name of a general concept, holding for all possible differences, but as this difference, the one and unique, als diese eine, ist einzig. Heidegger names this difference der durchtragende Austrag, what carries to term, in the sense of birth and gestation, what always carries and includes the other itself in and up to separation, but in the intimacy of the difference. The intimacy of the difference, the Innigkeit der Unterschiedes, is what unites or unifies the Diaphora, the Eigende der Diaphora. If one takes into account that in the words diaphora or difference, then in Greek as well as in Latin, the division or separation is in rapport, like rapport and the word rapport itself, like relation with the porteur or the port or porteur, ferro, feren or ferro. One finds more than justification and necessity for what resembles the play of Heidegger with the semantics of tragen, when he writes, for example, Die Innigkeit der Unterschiedes ist der Einige der Diaphora, des durchtragende Austrags. Der Unterschied trägt Welt in ihr Welten, trägt die Dinge in ihr Dinge aus. Also sie austrägend, trägt sie einander zu. The intimacy of the difference is the uniting of the diaphora, of what carries to term, in having carried through and through. Difference carries to term the world in its becoming world, carries to terms things in their becoming thing, carrying them thus to term. It relates them one to another. Der Unterschied, the difference, does not mediatize after the fact, après coup, vermittelt nicht nachträglich, in connecting world and things with the help of an added-on mediation, durch eine herzugebrachte Mitte. Difference first discovers, ermittelnd, makes world and things accede, as mediation, als Mitte, to their being, Wesen, that is to their mutual rapport, in ihr zueinander, whose unity it carries to term, dessen Einheit austragt. The German semantics of tragen, austrag, nachträglich, which we are following here as the problematics of Unterschied or difference, and which I am trying to translate into the Latin semantics of pour, of rapport, of relation, of the porteur à terme, of comportement, etc., with a view to problematizing and better interrogating the phrase of Sein und Zeit that we will not lose from the view. Das Hören der Stimme des Freundes, den jeden Dasein bei sich trägt. Heidegger tends to protect these semantics justly against certain Latinization. It is necessary to insist on this, because the whole historical perspectivizing of philen, of polemos, and of logos, whose reconstitution I would like to try to sketch, essentially implies, as we will see, a sort of Greek-German alliance and a foreclosure, indeed the diagnosis of a decay of Philen into amicitia. Where we are in the Sprache, Heidegger underscores that Unterschied is no more a distinction between objects, Gegenstände of a representation, Vorstellen, than it is a relation between world and things. If relation has the same etymology as the fair of difference or reference, like the whole family of porter, rapport, one sees that it is a matter of dissociating the thought of tragen and of austrag from every relational distinction, indeed from every objective dimension. For Heidegger next takes analogous precautions concerning the Latin word dimension. I paraphrase again a passage before coming back to the voice of the friend with Dasein, concerning which we already know we must avoid speaking of proximity or distance, of relation or distinction, of inside and outside, of objectivity and subjectivity. In the last passage, I'm getting ready to paraphrase again. Ereignis gönnen appear, which gather what at once will be more and more inseparable in Heidegger's thought. A thought of Ereignis that would be less a mode of being, eine Art des Seins, than being would be a mode of Ereignis. Eine Art des Ereignisses. And a thought of that gift accorded, or according that, as we'll see, Heidegger has never ceased to place in the heart of Philen. Here then, in this passage, it marks that all that Unterschied is not, all that from which their Unterschied must be carefully distinguished, is said in Latin. Der Unterschied ist weder distinction noch relation. The Unterschied is neither distinction nor relation. Das Wort Unterschied meint demnach nicht mehr eine Distinktion, die erst durch unser Vorstellen zwischen Geständen aufgestellt wird. The word Unterschied then no longer signifies a distinction established between objects of a representation only. Der Unterschied ist gleich wenig nur eine Relation, die zwischen Welt und Ding vorliegt, so dass ein Vorstellen, das darauf trifft, sie feststellen kann. The difference is just a simple relation present between world and a thing, and such as the representation can establish it after encountering it. Der Unterschied wird nicht nachträglich von Welt und Ding als deren Beziehung abgehoben. Difference is not abstracted after the fact, nachträglich, from the world and the thing as their report. Der Unterschied für Welt und Ding ereignet Dinge in das Gebärden von Welt. regnet Welt in das Gönnen von Dingen. The untranslatability culminates in this sentence. Difference for world and thing, regnet. Things in the gesture of gestation of the world, it regnet the world in the gift accorded of things. This detour through an overloaded context permits beginning to read tragen and gönnen. This carrying and this according in the double sense of the gesture of according a gift or a favor, gönnen, and of the harmonic accord, will have marked the Heideggerian thought of vielen. I hope that this detour will not seem too long nor anachronic. When returning nearly a quarter century earlier, we must try to hear what this brief and elliptic allusion to the voice of the friend, that each Dasein bei sich trägt, says. And that is the third reason why Derrida said that this friend was only evoked. This extracted or abstracted part of the friend that Dasein carries with it, neither near nor far, neither in nor outside of it, neither in the air, however inner, nor outside the air, is not just any part of the friend. It is what can permit evocation in general, to wit, the voice. What is evoked in this furtive or fleeting but doubtless Stimme, that will then be able to compose with all sorts of possibilities. Einstimmen, Anstimmigkeit, Stimmung, Bestimmung, Übereinstimmung, Verstimmen, Verstimmtheit und Verstimmung. Besides, a little earlier, analyzing die existenziale Konstitution des Da and Dasein als Befindlichkeit, Heidegger devotes long and keen analysis to Gestimmenheit and to the fact that in Gestimmtheit it is always already according to the dimension of a Stimmung, that Dasein is disclosed, erschlossen, as the being, étant, that is in its being delivered over, überantwortet, handed over, abandoned, as the being that has inexistent to be, since it is going to be a question of the friend and of friendship, and since I do not know yet what name to accord what some will be tempted to call feeling, sentiment, affect, passion, or pathy, it is necessary to begin by recalling the connection between Befindlichkeit, that is a word for which no good translation exists, state of mind, disposition, disposibilité, affection, and a parenthesis, that tonality of Stimmung, and the being delivered over of Überantwortung, and the being thrown of Geworfenheit. As Heidegger recalls, Befindlichkeit is not a state of the soul, a psychic quality that would then be projected onto things or persons, since the little phrase on the voice of the friend belongs to a long analysis of Mitsein in the modalities of Mitteilung, Mitverstehung, and Mitbefindlichkeit. Nothing that concerns the friend would come under than a psychology, no more than a social science or a human science in general, indeed an anthropology. It is Dasein and not psyche, man, self, nor subject, conscious or unconscious, that carries the friend in its voice, or rather in hearing his voice. Since the convention of the contract, in any case, in parentheses, the suggestion of John Sallis, the editor of this book, wants me to privilege here is a certain rapport of Heideggerian thought to the Greek tradition. I shall underscore 3 traits concerning Aristotle. First, Heidegger refuses to determine Befindlichkeit as the place of affects or feelings, at least in the psychological sense of the term. And then he refers positively to the fact that Aristotle has not studied the pathy in psychology, but in a rhetoric itself understood as a hermeneutic. The first systematic hermeneutic of the everydayness of Miteinandersein. It is in the same chapter that Heidegger mentions just as positively the tradition of Scheele, which goes back to Augustine and Pascal. One has access to the truth or knowledge on the basis of love or charity, and not the reverse. And yet, second, everything that in this education of the friend depends on an analytic of Sprache and Logos, comes immediately after, and thus supposes a critique, or rather a destruction, of the Aristotelian interpretation of Logos. In the conclusions of the immediately preceding chapters, Heidegger regrets that Aristotle's first phenomenological impulse in the analysis of Logos was interrupted or broken to become a simple theory of judgment, of connection or separation of representations and concepts. Among other things, this means that everything in the future that will be articulate in an essential way in Heidegger's thought, Ligen or Logos and Philen, will claim to come back to a pre-Aristotelian, in truth, a pre-Platonic hearing of Logos. Not only does the evocation of the voice of the friend follow the critique of the Aristotelian limit in the interpretation of Logos, but it will also be followed by an analogous reservation about the definition of man as animal rational. Xeon logos exon, eschon. A definition that, Heidegger says, is not false, but covers over or dissimulates the phenomenal ground from which this definition of Dasein is uprooted. This double reservation regarding Aristotle does not prevent Heidegger from defining the voice of the friend in such a way that only the opening of Dasein is up to it. Dasein being the essence of man, then is not contradictory to the Aristotelian proposal, according to which there is friendship par excellence. Protiphilia or philia, philia. Only between men, not between gods and men, not between animal and man, not between gods, not between animals. On this point, Heidegger will remain Aristotelian. Dasein alone has a friend. Dasein alone can carry it by sich. Man alone, as Dasein pricks up, opens or lends an ear to the voice of the friend, since the voice is what permits Dasein to open itself to its own potentiality for being. The animal has no friend. Man has no friendship properly, so called for the animal. The animal that is world poor, that has neither language nor experience of death, etc. The animal that has no hand, the animal that has no friend, has no ear either, the ear capable of hearing and of carrying the friend, that is also the ear that opens, Dasein to its own potentiality for being, and that, as we will hear in a moment, is the ear of being, the ear for being. I think I better end there before it gets too long. I say thank you very much, very pleasurable, this exposure of hearing and ear, and how Heidegger wants to avoid the Latinizations of the Greek terms, because he feels that there is a degeneration going on in Latin, which we are also sort of mocked of. I could say it's like in Aristotle you can still see the remnants of a healthier view on the world, whereas in Latin it's all gone, especially since it's a Latin that is much later to date. I say thank you very much, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye for now.